ZombieTech. Welcome to ZombieTech, a forum for engineers, scientists, and inventors to ponder on the technologies needed to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse.
She's Addie.
He's Whisker.
And who do we have this week?
This week we have the Super Joe Grand and the awesome Dr. Zaz Brooks. And they were both, I guess, cast members or stars of the show Prototype This.
I've seen that show.
Yeah.
I like stars. That's a good one. Better than co-hosts. Co-stars.
Co-stars. There you go. Yeah, celebrities from Prototype This, show on Discovery. And that went for about from October to 2008 to February 2009. And I think based on your presentations that I went net stalking, Joe, it reached about 1 million households per episode.
That's word on the street. We don't have actual ratings, but that's what we've heard is 1 million per episode. And that wasn't good enough, I guess.
What?
I'm surprised that even 1 million people would watch the show in the first place. That's pretty cool.
Well, you guys do some really awesome stuff. And it's like totally appropriate for the zombie apocalypse, because think about it. Zombie apocalypse hits. Holy crap, we have what? Maybe 2 weeks to come up with a system
to build each episode, yeah.
Right.
Plus, I think that most of the ideas on Prototype This were pretty ludicrous, and if the zombies are attacking, everything's gone ludicrous. So it all kind of makes sense in a twisted way,
right?
Yeah.
And then say you have a team of people, right? You're always going to have those people who are like, "Hey, you need to get this done," even though it sounds absolutely ridiculous. So get it done, otherwise, I'm going to kill you with my machete. Right?
Yeah.
So
be that.
So it's kind of like unknowing survivor in the group is to producer or director. I don't even know. I don't know who the bad guy is, I guess.
All of them.
All right, to the bad guys as you is to you.
Right.
So, yeah. So how did you guys get involved in Prototype This?
Zaz goes first because he was there first.
I had done a show for Discovery years before about crop circles, which was just kind of a random one-off thing. They sent some mail to an MIT mailing list and rounded up some people. And
what was the name of that one?
It's called Crop Circles: Mysteries in the Fields.
It's a must see.
It definitely is. They repeat it to this day. Actually, people keep telling me they've seen it on planes and stuff. Yeah. It had a flamethrower, which means the flamethrower and large explosions, which is basically all you need to sell a Discovery show.
And the production company received death threats about it, so that's a good show.
Are you kidding me? How? What?
I'm not kidding. You can check it out. The production company was called Termite Art Productions, and on their website, I think they changed their name now to Creative Differences, but on their website to this day is a phone message they received where a guy just goes apoplectic with rage at this crop circles show and threatens to put a gun to their head.
Why though? What is it about crop circles that
we're disputing the legitimacy of crop circles? And of course, if crop circles are real, then Zaz is like the Antichrist.
Oh my God.
For whatever reason, this guy was very worked up about the legitimacy or lack thereof of our crop circle.
Oh,
basically he was an engineer hater,
Yeah.
Oh,
he doesn't think that we're as capable as aliens.
Wow. And I had to say, I first learned about crop circles when I was like, gosh, I don't know, 6th grade. And I thought, whoa, aliens would totally do it. But wait. And then I saw some guy with a plank, like 2 guys with a plank walking around a field, and my hopes were dashed. So, yeah. But that's very cool. Okay, so continue.
If only they had had a plank and a flamethrower, you could have been at least inspired.
True. Very true. It was just a rope on a plank, and I was like, well, that's kind of anticlimactic.
They could have been aliens,
Yeah.
Aliens are people too.
Aliens are people too. Yeah, okay. Great. Keep on with that, Joe.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so you started with Discovery with crop circles.
Yeah, and later on, some friends of mine at MIT were sort of trying to sell a show to Discovery, and they were filming a bunch of people. Like they brought a film crew to campus to film people with inventions they'd made and gizmos that they had designed. And so I went up to show off some stuff, just basically to help those guys out in making the show. And then a few months later, I'd completely forgotten about it by that point. I got a phone call saying that they liked my casting tape, and they wanted to offer me a spot on the show. And I was really confused because I hadn't sent them a casting tape. But it turned out they'd used some of that footage and they'd cut it together with bits from the Crop Circle show, basically sell the show. And a few of us were initially offered the spot, and then contract negotiations ensued. And as a result of that, because of the kinds of terms that they wanted initially on the contract, very few of these other engineers had the patience to sit that through. Mm-hmm. And only a couple of us by the end of that were still involved. So then we said, well, we're going to need some more people. We're going to need like a really good electronics guy, maybe someone in the special effects industry that's used to putting together mechanical things really quickly. And so they sent out a second call, and that's how we rounded up Joe and Terry.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and the it's funny because I don't think either of us really were planning on being on TV for any sort of like career, if you will. And I hadn't heard about the casting directly. I was I'm on the technical advisory board for Make Magazine, and I got an email from somebody over at Make, and they're like, "Hey, there's this something going on," and I gave them your name, so you're probably going to get contacted by this production company. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. So the casting person from Prototype This emailed me, and they're like, "We're going to be in San Francisco in September. Like, can you come out?" I was in San Diego at the time. They're like, "Can you come up to San Francisco?" And I'm like, "Well, I just happened to be going up there for a conference." Mm-hmm. So I just brought a bunch of electronics and like gave them a little dog and pony show, and I had a huge fever. I was like completely sick. I was sleeping on the couch beforehand, and like thinking back, I should have sneezed on the lady or something. Get her sick.
And that's how the zombie apocalypse starts.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't get along. But anyway, so that was a day before I was actually going on a solo bike trip from San Francisco to San Diego back to my house.
Oh wow!
So I was like, okay, well, thanks for the time. Here's did my dog and pony show and said, if you're interested, just get back to me. And I get back home 2 weeks later, and there was like 14 voicemails on my phone, and they're like, "We want you on the show. Can you call us back?" And blah 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 blah. And that's part of the story. And I was sort of hesitant to do it, and I was like, I don't want to work for anybody else. TV, mm-hmm. I don't know, it doesn't seem right. And my wife Keely was like, "Come on, don't be a wimp.
Man up.
You get to be on TV. You love the attention. You'll be able to do cool stuff, and it's basically like you guys are having your own show, so you get to do whatever you want." Right. And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds good. that's a good excuse." I'm like, "Okay, fine." So then I ended up signing on, and that was the beginning of the end.
It's always funny because I've been net stalking you guys, well, obviously for today, and just like reading the interviews about your experience on Prototype This. Like at the end, that everyone asks, "So would you do this again?" Or like what like how is it, or how is your reaction to all this? And most of it was pretty much like, "Well, we'll see."
Yeah,
dot. I mean,
It's we're both, I don't know. I mean, we're both very vocal and outspoken people, and it was fun. I mean, doing the show was very interesting, and I got to meet Zaz, which was cool. And we had a really cool, workspace, and we got to do some really neat things, and we inspired people and traveled around, and it was fun. But there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that sort of made us bitter, and I think that's more interesting than the actual build itself. Is like what goes on behind the scenes when engineers have to actually design stuff and then also be engineers on screen, which are two completely separate things. Mm-hmm. But it was fun. People listening to this might be like, "Oh, those guys are such dicks. They were on TV and they don't even appreciate it." But it's like, it was fun, and we spent a lot of time. It was very, very hard work, and we have, the DVD set of the 13 episodes to show off, and it was cool. But it was a big learning experience as far as how television's actually manufactured.
I think it's very similar to a lot of media things. You see that with bands all the time too. They have a vision for things, and they have their artistic stuff they want to do, and sometimes they have to relinquish a lot of control to the record companies or whoever gives them a break to get their stuff out there. So on the one hand, while it was just fantastic to be able to build that stuff, not really having any control over what happened to the stuff that we shot after it went to post-production, that was kind of frustrating to us, because we're used to being able to be in control and have input in every stage of the process.
Mm-hmm. Do they change that much from like what it actually was to how they portrayed it?
Well, what we really wanted was to show the true design process and what actually happens, when you're designing and when you're testing and you're prototyping and things are failing and you try it again. And there was a lot of neat technical hacks and technical things that we did that just weren't shown because the Discovery and the production company had thought that mainstream viewers don't care about that stuff. They want to see things explode and they want lots of colorful graphics on the screen. And they basically were saying that all mainstream viewers are idiots.
Right.
And I'm sure there's a large percentage of them that are, but in this day and age, a lot of people are more technical than Discovery gave them credit for. Sure. And the whole DIY community and just the whole open source hardware movement, like there's a lot of people involved now that are viewers of the show and that would have benefited from more technical stuff. So Zaz and I were always the very vocal people that wanted to show more of the true technical process. And it took a lot of effort, just to get certain things in there. And we did a pretty good job. Like we had our kind of funny little podcast segments and we were able to do some things, but we had really no control. Like Zaz said, no control of the final product. Like we had in our heads what we thought the show should be like. And then the show aired. Like there was no in between. For the few episodes we were able to actually view a rough cut, we would put together like pages and pages of notes about changing technical things and making sure, at least if they were going to show something technical, it was right. And all that stuff was ignored. It was like a book publisher. You provide edits to a book publisher. They can choose to incorporate them or not. Right. And it probably just ended up being too much work for them to deal with.
So they spend time making graphics instead.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a whole lot of stuff sort of behind the scenes with the show in terms of the way it was sold to Discovery that we didn't become aware of until much later. So we're approaching it, in a sort of naive way as engineers, being like, yeah, we're going to build these cool things and we're going to show everyone how we did it and it's going to inspire kids to become engineers. And we started to find out that this, things couldn't really happen that way. For example, because Discovery chooses their demographic, or any TV show. I don't want to single Discovery out for this. Any TV show chooses their demographic that the show is targeted at, so they can sell ads, because that's really what it's all about. Mm-hmm. And so they had sold the show as being the greatest things that you'll ever see in the Sharper Image catalog, right? Which is just, kind of weird when you think about it, because we're prototyping things. They're prototypes, not products. Right. But for them, it was all about the product and it was all about the result. Huh. And so the demographic that they'd sold the show on was older males. So I think it was something like males between the ages of 25 and 50. Wow. So we didn't even know this until later, but they weren't even aiming the show at young people considering being engineers. Mm-hmm. So the whole premise that we're going into, we're going to inspire kids, was just completely null and void. And
even, it wasn't even targeted to our kind. To what, 18 to 30 or whatever, sort of our generation of kids that would be interested in this stuff and wanting to kind of build stuff, yet alone, younger viewers, which it turns out that the younger ones were the ones that really liked the show the best. Mm-hmm.
So once you've sold all your advertising for, the latest Chevy or whatever, it really doesn't mean anything if a lot of kids watch the show and love it. And we get emails all the time, and I meet people, in the street and stuff that say, hey, I saw your show. It was really great. My kid loves it. Can you, sometimes it'll be a kid, or sometimes it'll be like a parent saying, hey, can you come and say good day to my kid or something? He really love it. Mm-hmm. But to the network, that kind of fan base, once they've sold the advertising for older people, is not really important.
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting for us to kind of, again, talk about behind the scenes stuff that happens and kind of dispel the myth of TV, mm-hmm. because there's a lot of engineering in quotes, TV that is coming out or trying to come out, like Top Engineer on Discovery and like mm-hmm. Chain Reaction show with the Rube Goldberg machines. There's a lot of television production companies are trying to now exploit engineers. So, as far as I don't think that we want to come out and sort of portray this television personality image as being like this great thing, because there are a lot of downfalls. And I'm sort of the mind of like, share everything. And if mm-hmm. somebody still wants to go and try to, do it and participate in some TV show, at least they know what they're getting into.
Yeah. So they really want to build us up, as being these super engineers that were doing these things that no one else could do. And that was really against, our kind of ethos, which is, yeah, you can do this too. You're going to have to do some hard work. You're going to have to learn some things, but you can build cool things, and we want to help you out, with our knowledge. So the whole kind of media creation as setting us up to be this untouchable ideal is definitely something that we don't support, and
Sure.
we tried to be like that.
Yeah, I think also too we need to mention that the production company that made our show, Beyond Productions, is also the same production company that made Mythbusters.
Yeah,
and
I
think that's a really important thing to say, because Mythbusters for them was their huge show. Like that was their breakthrough show. And they were essentially trying to recreate that. They're like, okay, well, if we just, Mythbusters, we film them, they build cool stuff and test myths. They're like, we can do that again. Let's throw some engineers in a room, 4 engineers in a room. Let's just film them building prototypes of stuff, and it's going to be awesome. So they sort of went into it. They didn't really think about the process. They didn't know about the true engineering process. But we got a lot of comparisons early on about like, oh, they're just Mythbusters ripoffs and blah, blah, blah. But really it's not, because they were, they're testing myths and just kind of building stuff. If they're even building it themselves, you don't really know what goes on behind the scenes. And then things explode. Whereas we were actually, designing stuff from scratch. So
Right.
It's a little bit different, but the production company had this mindset of let's make the next Mythbusters. And then it completely just fizzled out by the end, partially because Discovery would rather, they said that it took too long to produce each episode and cost too much money. Where I think we took like 2 to 5 weeks per episode, and I think we had like a $10,000 build budget or something. But
What?
I guess most of the money being spent was on the film crew, and they could go ahead and make a few dozen documentaries with that same amount of money that they could air over and over again.
Yeah, camera crew time is really expensive, and that's the two sort of primary drivers of show cost: camera and crew time, and then post production time. So initially, they were trying to really limit the amount of camera time that we spent on it, because they would film like 100 hours of footage per episode.
Mm-hmm.
It was super ridiculous, and then they'd send those 100 hours to post, and they're not going to have time to watch 100 hours of footage. They just have to scrub through and find something that looks good,
Like
Right.
solder.
right?
No, like welding.
And initially, post production was being done in Australia, because that's where Beyond is from, and that's because post is a significant cost, and they can pay lower salaries and stuff in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So we were FedExing these video discs every single day back to
Wow.
Australia to post. So the time difference and everything meant that post really had no idea what we were doing, and eventually that got moved to LA. But that just goes to show that the actual engineering and the cost of engineering and sort of what it takes to build stuff is actually a minor consideration in the minds of the TV production people.
Yeah, and we were essentially disposable talent.
Yeah. Well, as long as you guys got the job done, then I mean.
Well,
That
yeah,
was it.
that's true. But we can talk about good stuff that happened on the show too, like how the builds would be useful for zombies against zombies.
Oh, always. We and I wanted to know then, like, for the person who, like, because they're getting auditions for top engineer and applications for top engineer, right?
Yeah, a lot of the
Like-
people that we talk to
Yeah.
on a daily basis are getting hit up by these.
Right.
We get solicited all the time for ridiculous concepts, and I keep saying if it's anything like prototype this, I'm not interested.
So, I mean, what?
Unless the pay is really good.
This is one of the reasons why why we're building up our production company, Toymakers, the way that we are, because it just watching these Discovery shows and National Geographic shows and TLC shows and all these things, they all they have a good core idea that early in on the pitch process somebody had a good idea, and then it just sort of got nibbled away bit by middle management and production and producers and whatnot, and what you have left at the end of the day is something that just doesn't reach its full potential. And
well, it's like a shell of what the original idea
you can
was.
see what it was supposed to be, but it's just not quite there. And we're kind of
the main
trying to
thing-
go the opposite direction and let's make the production as easy and as inexpensive as possible. We'll have to cut some corners to do it, but that leaves it so that the budget can go towards the engineering side of things.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to realize that network executives seem to be able to hold exactly one idea in their head at once. So for Prototype This, it was these products are the greatest things you'd see in a catalog. And I was also on the second season of a Discovery show called Time Warp, and that one was that idea was things slowed down really slow. right? So when we started to sort of really flesh out time warp ideas, and we didn't want to just do high speed, we wanted to do some amazing time lapses, and we wanted to, do different frequency spectra and Schlieren photography and all these other ways that you can visualize things that you can't see with the naked eye. The execs were always saying, no, we've got to keep back to our core thing. Our thing is slowing things down. That's what we do. We're like, the show is called Time Warp, right? We can speed things up too. And they're like, nope, we slow things down.
They missed the boat.
Gosh. Just lost potential.
All right, so you guys, which of the projects that you guys were able to put together for Prototype This would you think would be the most valuable in the event where, the rest of the crew turns into zombies and tries to bite you?
Wow. Actually, let me pull up our list of builds because, Zaz, do you remember them all offhand?
I would...
Well, we could do this.
Have to think a while to get all 13, but off the top of my head, I would say the Traffic Buster would have to be right up there because if you jack that thing up and start driving around on it, it's going to be very difficult for your average zombie to climb into the cab or avoid it, and you could easily run down a lot of zombies in that thing, even though it didn't move that fast.
Now, for those of you who haven't seen the show yet, it's on Netflix.
It's actually it's been being anonymously seeded on the Pirate Bay.
Yeah.
We don't get royalties, by the way, so feel free to disseminate as you wish. According to the laws of
ZombieTech does not condone nor piracy bad. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So the vehicle that they're talking about, they took a pickup truck and essentially it flips out for legs, I guess, and pushes itself up into the air, and it's got these special tires on it that can allow it to roll forward, backwards, sideways, or roll directly around right in a radius circle. And the theme of the episode was dealing with traffic jams, parking spaces, and that sort of thing. So literally with this thing you could roll over the top of the zombie hordes,
which is awesome.
Yeah, that would be a good one. I think I'm kind of leaning. I'm sort of stuck between the Flying Lifeguard episode, which had this, which was basically a goal to save swimmers on unguarded beaches. So it was essentially like a cannon that would automatically aim itself to the coordinate of the person in the water and like fire a life jacket. So something like that would be cool because you could just have it fire actual like missiles at zombies instead.
It's true. It was a cannon.
But then I'm also sort of torn between, there's so many. I mean, God, the possibilities are endless. The robotic firefighter assistant, we built this awesome pyro pack, and part of this like high-tech pyro pack thing for firefighters was this, I don't know, what did you call that? Zaz designed this like chemical extinguisher arm piece.
Yeah, we kept calling it the superhero.
The superhero, yeah.
I forget what it was called. It was like you could put out a fire like a freaking superhero.
Yeah, so replace the fire extinguisher with
battery acid,
oxygen, battery acid, or like a flamethrower or something, and it would just be super cool.
Oh, that would work.
So that's one, and then the third one are the giant boxing robots.
Yep.
And I think there was a movie made about this recently. I think they ripped us off. And these were 10-foot giant boxing robots where they were controlled by humans outside the ring wearing boxing gloves with accelerometers on them and using augmented reality with glyphs. Camera, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
With camera motion or motion of the boxer. So, you could always hide in your zombie bunker and then control these giant boxing robots to go, beat up zombies.
You know what? I think a combination of the stair climber. For the firefighters, we built a robot that would carry all the gear up the stairs. And you put a boxing robot on the stair climb. Go anywhere, and it can just smash zombies in the head.
And then add the pyro pack to it and shoot flames at them.
Yeah.
Hey, that works. Then you can go down any staircase.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we go through, go from the beginning to the end for the different projects, and you guys give me the good, the bad, the ugly, and maybe, and then of course, since we're ZombieTech, a quick way that it could be used against zombies.
Okay, this is going to be funny. So now note that these episodes aired in a different order. Than we filmed them, which is sort of interesting.
Oh.
But I don't know if you're looking on my website. By the way, all of the like the technical documentation that I put together and some of the stuff that Zaz put is all on my website for each episode.
Okay.
So if you want to look at source code or schematics or notes or whatever for the different
cool.
tools, you can do that.
Okay.
There's
But
a
if
lot
you
of
look
other
at-
really cool stuff on Joe's website too. So, just go over there and surf
that's-
around.
So is
But
it
we're looking on my site starting at episode 1, which is the mind-controlled car.
right?
Is that right?
Yep, that's what I got. So mind-controlled car. What was the good, the bad, and the ugly?
Well, for me, the good was to be able to work with one of these biofeedback headsets. The EEG-based neurofeedback headsets, which were at that time not on the market yet. So this was a totally new, bleeding-edge product, and being able to sort of train up these models so you could think about doing something and it would happen, and then you actually use that to control motors and bend the spoon. That was one of my favorite podcasts, was using my mind to bend the spoon. So that was really cool. That was definitely the good for me.
And the stuff really did work. I mean, it's sort of generated, I guess, a fingerprint of some brain activity, and you could think about, like, Terry would think about bacon, and that's how his car would start for the demolition derby. And I just thought about starting a car, and the car would start. It was really cool stuff, and there's, that was before, I think Mattel has a mind control game out, and a few other companies, and we had one of 7 prototypes or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was not much in this space yet, so that was really cool. My good for that episode was just building the control electronics, because we had a PlayStation 2 driving controller that would integrate into. I believe I had a basic stamp for that. That would feed into a basic stamp, and the basic stamp would have like some on-screen display some stats of your ECG and a bunch of other stuff. And I think it also had to integrate with one of Zaz's machines that did a bunch of other stuff. It was just a really kind of cool electronic system that ultimately would control these remote control cars. So it was a fun build to do.
Cool.
That was the good part.
Yeah.
Good.
I know my bad part, but you do yours first.
I've got to think. I think mine goes better into ugly. So why don't you do bad?
Oh, wait,
I'll do a bad part for him.
Is it
Like
good
if they were to take an imprint of somebody thinking about brains, then zombies could use the device to drive cars, and that would suck.
Oh, that's true, right? They could hijack connections and stuff. That would be bad.
Oh boy.
But so what is it really? It's good, bad, ugly, and
Zombies.
zombie. Okay, so bad. Actually, I don't know. Mine went straight to ugly too.
Okay, well, we can
Let's
go
see.
to ugly. That's okay.
Oh, well, I'll let Joe talk about this one. Now, mine ugly is just the way that Discovery, because they were trying to productize everything, completely changed the idea of the show. So the original idea of the show, of this episode, was that it was going to be a therapy session for people who have road rage, right? So you have road rage, you can't be trusted on the roads. So you have to do this demolition derby, and you have to stay calm in order to win the demolition derby. So you need to sort of work on your anger management in order to, participate in this competition. Mm-hmm. It has nothing at all to do with actually driving on the real roads. But then when they marketed the episode, they changed it all, and they said, if you get too angry, your car will slow down and stop and park off the road,
right.
Which of course just makes you more angry. Right?
Right.
So everyone who watches the episode, comes up to us and says, "That's a really stupid idea because, of course, it's just going to make you more angry." You guys are idiots.
my ugly was a behind the scenes one, and similar to the way that Discovery changed the show, or the network changed the show. The one thing that a lot of people see when they watch a show is there's 4 guys on the show.
Yeah.
It's kind of a sausage party.
Yeah. So, with Mythbusters, there was originally 2 guys, Adam and Jamie, and then they added some build crew, and there happened to be some females in there, and the ratings shot through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So whether or not it was because of the female, but the way that the television network thought is, okay, let's add a female to the mix.
Which, by the way, we were in complete agreement with
Yeah.
at the beginning. So when we were first doing casting, the second round of casting for the show, Mike and I both said we really need to get a female on the show. Mm-hmm. Both because it helps ratings, and also because of the educational mission of the show. We want to tell females they can be engineers too.
Right. But adding a female for the sake of adding a female is different than adding a female for a reason, right? Like having
Right.
getting if there's a very smart female that fits in, that's one thing. But if there's just a female to add ratings, that's not the right way to do it.
And that would actually backfire.
Right.
Too.
If you just did the tits and ass, then you're gonna fail. But if you manage to get somebody like Jerry Ellsworth to show up, then your cool factor goes through the roof.
Yeah, for sure. They wanted to add a female specifically because they thought it would help ratings. Mm-hmm. I won't go into too many of the details, other than you don't see a lot of it on the episode because she was cut out of it all. But it almost led to me walking out and probably to Zaz close to walking out of the show. And this was the first episode they aired, but I think it was like the 6th episode
that you
we
guys
filmed
did.
or something. And it basically it just threw a whole monkey wrench into the whole process. And it was just adding an extra person to get more ratings. Just didn't make sense, but whatever. That was a really ugly part of that show for me. And Zaz actually was the one that convinced me to not walk out. Like every day I would come in. Every day I would come in and be like, dude, I can't. I'm so angry. I cannot even do this. He's like, come on, just one more day. He's like, we'll get through it. And sure enough, we did. But that also just kind of showed the thinking process of the network, which just really got to me. As there's a reason that Zaz and I both, Zaz works better with people than I do, but we're both pretty independent people, and just having some overlord in some building somewhere making decisions essentially about your life at that point. We're living and breathing this stuff.
Right.
It was not a good thing. Not a good for our mental.
Was it she came in and was useless, or like
she was not only was she useless, she was a complete psychopath and liar and among other things. Yeah, many things that were not contributing to the actual engineering of the show.
One of the crew came up to me at one point and said, I finally figured out what her main skill is. It's getting in the way.
Anyway, that was the ugly.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I didn't remember a woman there at all, so they did it.
The takeaway lesson from that is just that, TV is such a manufactured land. No matter what really happens, they can make it appear any way they want to. And so you don't see her in the episode because even though we didn't do any makeup shoots, they were able to completely eliminate her from the episode.
Well,
Right.
with 100 hours per episode, it's not.
And actually, we should also say that the reason that she didn't make the episode and that she was fired wasn't because she got in the way. It was just because she didn't look. They said that she didn't have good TV quality, or like she didn't look good on TV. So it really had nothing to do with what was actually going on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
I wonder if some of that goes on with this podcast, because we already had like the engineer guy, and we already had the attractive female talent.
Huh?
And the only way that we could really like do the next cliche thing was just to like add zombies.
I guess. And speaking of zombies,
I mean, just let's be thankful that they haven't figured that out for engineering TV shows yet. That, once you add a female to the cast, then you should add some undead people to the cast. And it's like welding.
That usually comes in the form of the network.
Zing. So,
all right, so zombies. This is an easy one, I think, for mind-controlled car.
okay.
Yeah, obviously, if you've seen the various things like Zombieland, right? If you crash the car, you can be stuck in with the seatbelt. You can get a car into positions where the zombies can just overrun you. So it's much safer to sit back in your bunker and mind control the car as it just drives around and plows through zombies.
And it's like playing a real-life version of Death Race.
It's like a gleeful thing because every single time you hit it, you get happier.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. All right, boxing robots. So we got the zombie, but let's do the good, bad, ugly.
So this was actually the first one that we filmed.
Okay.
So this was the four of us kind of dropped in together. Didn't have a lot of experience working together, and it's we're just like, what are we going to do? And this one was actually Terry's idea because he came from the background of building these big pneumatic systems for special effects, and so this was something. When he suggested boxing robots, he's like, I basically know how to do this. It's going to be second nature mechanically. We just got to sort of make it a little bit more high tech. So that one got approved relatively easily by the network.
Sure.
And this one actually, so it was the first one that we filmed as a real episode, but we did shoot a pilot episode a few months earlier. Was it a few months earlier? Yeah. So this was sort of like we're coming into it again, new with now we have a what we think is the direction of the show. And it seemed like a no-brainer episode. But what's your good?
I was a little bit skeptical initially about these giant boxing robots and just how they could, whether it could be made to look good, and how cool it would look on camera, and the whole sort of fight night at the end with all the jib shots, the crowd and everything like that. It actually looked really cool. So I was really happy with sort of the big finale, and the way that people managed to dig the control system and stuff like that. And Joe was hilarious.
Don't give away the end.
Oh. Well, Joe was hilarious on Fight Night with all of his trash talking and so on. Pipe through a voice changer to make it sound like a robot was talking. So that was an excellent finale. That was probably one of our best finales.
I found a big piece of chain link somewhere in the warehouse that I started wearing for the episode too. That's why I'm wearing it, in case people are wondering. Yeah, for me, the good also was exactly like what Zoz said. It's just I think the whole build just came together and it was really cool. And there was a lot of integration between the mechanical control and some of the electronics, and then all of the control system stuff that Zoz was working on, and the scoring system, just everything. It was just a nice integration of stuff that worked really well. The finale, yeah, it was fun. We were, since this was our first episode, we were still happy and cheery and we weren't
idealistic and
idealistic. It was a really cool episode, and things seemed to work. Obviously there were build drama with everything, and Terry had some problems building the robot towards the end, but it came together really well, and it was just a really fun, one of my favorite episodes.
Cool.
What about that?
Bad for me. It was just very frustrating. When I came up with the idea of doing the single camera tracking system and using AR Toolkit, explaining that to the network people was one of the most painful experiences I've ever had, because they just could not understand what this thing was going to do. And this idea of tracking a glyph and matching the rotation of the glyph to the rotation of the robot torso, and I just had to try and figure out like about 15 different ways of explaining it. And then when we finally filmed that little podcast that explained it, and it finally clicked in everyone's head, from the TV side, that was just such a relief, because it had been really like pulling teeth trying to explain that.
Right.
That was a really interesting choice for a control system. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that was way before anybody had done it, with cell phones and UAV drones and all this stuff. Like, it was, I think, a very early implementation of it out, for a public kind of setting.
Yeah, we actually put it in a paper that we wrote about halfway through filming that we had in IEEE Pervasive Computing. And I was trying to look up references for anyone that had used an AR glyph to control a motor in a multi-axis physical system, and I couldn't find a single reference.
Wow, good for you guys.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Very nice.
So bad for me is that early in the episode we went to a boxing gym to learn a little bit about boxing technique, so we could learn how to throw the punches properly, so that we could properly detect them with our wireless accelerometer system. And they decided to throw me into the ring with this Golden Gloves champion. I forget her name, but she was a very small woman, but extremely powerful. And so we were kind of boxing around a little bit, and I got a bloody nose. And the bad thing about it is that they stopped the fight for this sparring match, I guess you could say. They stopped the fight, and they should have let it go, because I was just getting warmed up. And blood doesn't scare me, but it scared the producers, I guess.
Fair enough. You wanted to get to duke it out.
I was just getting, I'm a little older than her. My muscles were just getting loosened up.
Right.
Anyone seen The Fighter or anything like that? Like, that's a legitimate boxing technique, is to take a whole bunch of punches and wear out the other person just from hitting you. And then you come back at the end and just clean their clock.
Yeah.
Right.
That was Joe's plan.
I just didn't, no one gave me the chance.
Not buying it. You got beat up by a girl.
I did, but I was still very disappointed that I couldn't fight back more.
Sure. Next time.
Next time, yeah.
And any ugly?
That's what I was gonna use for ugly, actually, which was just the sort of the manipulative aspect of things. Again, like, because we went to the boxing ring place to learn something, and then they were like, throw them in the ring and have the nerds get beaten up, So It quickly became clear that we weren't actually there to learn anything. It was just there to, for some cheap comic relief. And then similarly, Mike built the second robot from scratch while Terry was finishing off the first one. And that was completely cut out because they wanted to pigeonhole everyone. Terry was the builds physical things guy. And so they just couldn't show all the work Mike did, which was, a problem that followed him throughout the show. They never quite figured out how to pigeonhole him. And so therefore a lot of his stuff just got cut out.
That explains a lot. That explains a lot because, sometimes we'd be like, well, what did this guy do? Like, we didn't see him doing anything,
And he did do a lot. He basically did all of the stuff that nobody else wanted to do. And, throughout the episodes, he'd work with technologies that nobody had touched before. And he tried lots of things, but it just never really, he never had a defined role.
Yeah. But just because they couldn't really understand what his role was, with just a 2-week time frame, a lot of the time, Joe and Terry and I would sort of resort to things we already knew how to do because there just wasn't time to learn a whole new thing. Whereas sometimes the builds required something that we didn't know how to do, and Mike was always the guy that would go off and do that research.
Mm-hmm.
And they never really figured out, or maybe they just never even understood that that's what he did and why he was such an important part of the team.
Right.
Yeah. I don't really have an ugly for boxing robots.
Okay.
I already mentioned the zombie apocalypse.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Then traffic busting truck again. We have the zombies already, but good, bad, ugly.
Oh my god! Good for this was the omnidirectional couch.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Building the prototypes of the prototype. So this was another. I mean, all of them sort of have favorite aspects to me, but this was one where we had these Mecanum wheels that came off of an Airtrax forklift, and there were these crazy wheels that move in any direction, and the forklift had a neat kind of control system for it. And Airtrax essentially just gave us a set of the wheels and a set their silver control box and some schematics and some pinouts and said, apply. I think it was 0 to 5 volts for various speed control, to go forward, backwards, 0 to 5 volts on this pin to go left and right, whatever it was. So I wired up a system with a wireless PlayStation 2 controller, connected up to a basic stamp that would then deal with those signals and process them through a bunch of other stuff to then control the wheels. And it was just super cool. And so we needed a way to test the wheels while the other guys were working on the actual mechanical structure of the truck. So I think it was either Zaz or North that came up with the idea of let's put it on a couch. And so we built this couch, or somebody built the couch frame. It wasn't me. And we put all the electronics on it and drove this couch around, and it was super cool. And it was just so much fun. So to me, that was the best, just the process of it. And we got to do so many fun tests at the go-kart track with sensors and stuff. It was just a fun build.
Hey, I saw that, and there was a whisker switch. And I'm Whisker, and I saw what Zaz did to that whisker switch. He ran right into the wall with that thing and ripped it out. I was disheartened, to say the least.
That's why you shouldn't let blindfolded people drive, even if they've got whiskers. But Joe just likes the couch because he got to go to the chicken shop and get a roast chicken.
Yeah, saw that.
The chicken lady was awesome.
She's like, whoa, that's cool. Okay, Zaz.
You have any good?
Yeah, I mean, I just I really enjoyed the funny stuff that this is where we sort of really started having a free hand with our podcast and being able to sort of film funny, lighthearted things to try and explain complex stuff. So the blindfolded golf cart test and explaining the sensors and pretending. I think it never made the episode, but there was one where we blindfolded Joe and pretended to throw him in the bay. So we just had a lot of fun with it, and I'm sad that a lot of that comic relief never made it into the show because we thought it was really funny.
I completely forgot about that.
I wonder if they still have all the material. They should do a season 1 redo.
I think they keep all those tapes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know they have all the time warp stuff, so they probably kept all this stuff too.
There's a lot of scenes of me streaking too that never made it on screen.
Oh my.
I don't know why.
Well, this was before. We were in widescreen HD, so
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that Joe in a Speedo was probably my ugly for the show overall.
So let's see. That was the good. The bad for this one. Oh well, the first thing that comes to mind for me, the bad of this episode was just getting in an argument with Kevin Binkert, who was one of the guys that originally was one of the 5 of the crew of the show of the co-hosts, and somehow was relegated to a builder or helper or something.
Yeah, the thing with Kevin was that he was one of the original 5, but he was because he runs his own machine shop business and everything. He never would commit to doing it full time. So he was always going to be half time, and so they were struggling constantly. Is he on every other build, or is he only half on each build? How does it work out? And eventually they just said, we can't figure it out. You're going to be a guest. And this was 6 or 7 episodes in. So they had to go back and re-edit Traffic Buster, which he'd really taken the lead on the mechanics of and cut a lot of his stuff out. So that was a shame.
Yeah. And that was, so for me, that was the first time of actually getting in an argument with somebody on the show. And Kevin was right, but I was, I'm just a stubborn person, so of course I was going to argue back anyway. Where when it was time to test the actual control electronics on the truck itself, Kevin wanted to make sure that we had some sort of like kill switch, and he was very cautious about raising up the legs and driving the truck. And I was basically like, well, come on, we already tested it on the couch. What could go wrong? And
if it goes wrong, it's going to look awesome on TV anyway.
Yeah, but it basically was, Kevin wanted to add some additional safety features to the electronics, and I didn't want to do it. So we kind of had an argument, and so that was a little bit bad for me. But then the good that came out of it was that I don't know, I gained a lot of respect for him, I guess, just because I don't know, I felt like we became better friends after that. I don't know. They didn't show that on screen, but it was, he was right. Obviously, we needed more safety mechanisms, especially because the control system for this thing, if the silver box that AirTrack gave us lost signal, so if it wasn't getting 0 to 5 volts, or if it wasn't properly receiving power or something, it would basically, what did we call it? It would basically just freak out and move in any direction.
Drive at maximum speed in a random direction.
Which is great for zombie apocalypse, I guess. But not good for humans.
It's whatever.
You want the fail on your throttle for an airplane to go to full throttle, but for something like that, you want it to stop.
Yeah, this was failing full speed ahead, random. So that's why Kevin wanted to put in some extra features there, and ultimately I think we put in enough to make it safer. But yeah, it was just bad because no one likes arguing, and especially no one likes arguing on camera. And it was a kind of short-lived thing, and we got over it really fast. But I liked him a lot more after that.
So in order to get in Joe Grand's good graces, just argue with him and be right.
Right.
Okay. Do we get Zaz's ugly or bad?
Bad or ugly?
I think we.
I guess I would just say this was the first one that they showed us a cut of before it went to air, like a rough cut,
Okay.
Or like an almost final cut. And Joe and I was sort of really disappointed at the end of it. Like, you watched it, and it was kind of funny, but we sort of noticed at this one that there was almost none of the technical detail had made it into the episode. So the whole thing, Joe going from the rat's nest to designing a circuit board to put everything on, sort of lost. And what actually did make it in was just a lot of conflict between Terry and Kevin that was overblown, and a lot of welding and hitting things with hammers for no reason that I could understand. And I was just like, wow, this was like a really interesting build, and it's just been reduced to a bunch of dudes in a shop welding,
Right.
And no one gets to see the overview of it. And I complained about that, and I think Joe did too. And as a result, they just stopped showing us episodes.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a wrong way to go about it.
Yeah. And we had infrared sensors and ultrasonic and stereo vision system that Zaz had written, and it was just, there's a lot going on there that was just totally skipped.
Sorry, guys. That's us.
Yeah. Can't you tell we're over it?
Would have been nice if you would have had your laser rangefinder done at that point. Would have been
actually
handy.
Would have been perfect for the curb when we were doing our parallel parking next to the curb.
Yeah.
Because the other sensors were sort of working, but there's problems with infrared and ultrasonic outside and against things and whatever. So yeah, that actually would have been a good one.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The 6-legged all-terrain vehicle. This one was actually one that didn't work out, right?
Yeah,
you just did it
you
for
guys
everyone.
failed hard.
Oh, did I just spoil the ending? I mean, it worked.
Actually, but that's a good point, though, that I think that we should mention anyway, is that, yeah, this was one of the episodes that didn't work, and it was one that we actually had to convince the network to show that.
Oh.
Because we failed, we couldn't get it working, and we tried a lot of times, but we learned a lot during the failures, and the failures are very educational things in themselves. And at the end of when we filmed the show, and the network said, "Oh my God, you failed! How can we show this? You guys are supposed to get everything right the first time."
Yeah, so they were trying to figure out a way that they could use the footage we had to try and make it look like it worked. And we were like, "No, you shouldn't do that. That's really bad."
Right.
Yeah, so we were able to convince them to show it failing, And because that's more of a true process, right? Sometimes you fail, you learn a lot during that process, you try to fix things. And we definitely would have gotten it working if we had more time, because a lot of the failure came down to the control system of trying to get the legs to go properly in their PID loop and stuff. And we were really close, but the failing is okay. And this was the first time that that the network understood that. And I think that was a kind of win on our side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
but that's not my good.
Okay. What's your good?
I'm not sure yet, Zaz.
I mean, for me, the good was just getting a chance to build this. When we first talked to people like Martin Bueller from Boston Dynamics and stuff, and we said, why did you guys not try to do this already? Like, is there a reason this is not going to work? And he said, yeah, we've been wanting to do this, for years and years, but we've never been able to get the money to do it. So just having the chance to tackle a project like this is really, a dream job.
Sure.
Yeah, the good for me was being able to do a lot of the research before building this. So we got to go to SRI.
Okay.
We got to go to Stanford to learn about sort of the bio. Was that Stanford? No, Stanford actually was for a different building.
Yeah, no, that was for
But SRI was definitely for this one, to see their robotic wall climbing things, right?
No, that was the electrostatic adhesion stuff.
Oh man. But we saw some. Oh, yeah, we went to was that UC Davis with the bugs? Was that UC Davis? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm getting old.
Anymore.
But we did a lot of cool research, and we had Guy Halden from Sandbox Innovations bring his miniature version of this 6-legged all-terrain vehicle that he'd been working on. That was a tripod gate little vehicle. So working with him was kind of cool. We just got to do a lot of research up front. That was kind of fun.
Okay. And then the bad?
Well, it was bad that it didn't work.
Yeah.
I was really
That's
looking
a bit
forward
of a disappointment.
to
Yeah.
having this thing around, and this could have been the greatest anti-zombie device of all of them. With those legs whipping around, you could just carve through hordes of the things.
Yeah,
Yep.
with that steel cage and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, the bad is that we just didn't have the opportunity to go that final stretch, right? And it's like, what do they say with engineering? It's the last 1% takes 99% of the time, or whatever it is. We were almost there, but we just needed some extra time. And it was, the TV show was about making TV. It wasn't really about engineering stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were, not filming it and we were actually designing a product and we were real engineers, we would have put forth the effort to do it, but we just couldn't. So it got mothballed, and it was just a really sad day in prototype this history.
Well, and I remember when I was watching it, feeling like you guys were really rushed to get it to work, even though, like, I don't know, maybe like a day before or 2 days before, like, I think one of the motors fritzed out, or
Oh yeah,
we busted one of those planetary gearboxes.
Yeah.
Totally destroyed that. But that was on finale day, so we were really glad that we had got a spare, or else it would have been all over even sooner.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that we can't fine tune a PID control loop of some complicated electromechanical system in the middle of a cow field in Northern California. It's just, engineering is hard, and this is the episode where hopefully the network realized that.
right.
Whether or not they cared was another thing.
But the viewers actually seemed to respond really well to that episode. The fact that it wasn't all staged and fake for TV, and that we could fail. So
Right.
Yeah, because at that point up to then, everybody was like, well, of course they're going to succeed, right? Because that's how we were historically. So it did throw a little monkey wrench in there.
True. Cool. Backyard water slide simulator. Whisker's favorite.
my favorite too.
Yeah, this thing was awesome.
So the good.
The fact that they were crazy enough to let us build this thing again. Like a lot of luck happened on this episode where things sort of came together. Like the fact that Splashtacular had this amount of, they have lead times and all their stuff, right? So the fact that they had enough material to make a Taurus out of and send it to us, and then the biggest element of luck was the fact that it was white on the inside, because we hadn't really worked out our projection system, and we finally decided just to project on the inside of the tube. But if it hadn't come white, we wouldn't have been able to do that, and we probably would have had a much crappier projection system.
Sure.
Yeah, the good for me was just the thing was completely awesome. And there were so many complicated pieces to this. This build actually took us 5 weeks, contrary to what they say in the show, which I think was 2. There was
Yeah.
a lot of people working behind the scenes to assemble the frame and do all of the welding, and they didn't really get a lot of credit on the show.
Mm-hmm.
But just the result, like the finale of this thing, was so awesome. It made me want to rip off all my clothes and jump in it.
You
And it
kind of
just-
did, Joe.
And I mean, the ride, and it actually, it worked well. It was like, I hadn't had so much fun inside of a water slide since we were at the water park in Iowa. And it was just, I mean, it felt really cool. The projection system worked. Like, it was just it was just awesome. I don't know. I mean, everything about it was awesome. It was so much fun.
Very cool. I think it was one of the neatest looking builds that you guys had done too.
It
But it
was
was
gorgeous.
just massive.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
torus of steel structure was beautiful.
So
For bad.
yeah.
I know an ugly for that, but how about bad?
You should. I had one, but I've just now forgotten what it was.
Well, I'll go. I think the bad was, again, that there was a lot of people working behind the scenes on the build that never got the credit. They were sort of shown at the beginning and shown at the end, and that was the problem again with television, where they try to sort of pigeonhole you into doing certain things, but there was so many other people. It wasn't just me, Zaz, Terry, and North, and there was a lot going on, and a lot of people that didn't get due credit. But it was just that was kind of the bad for me.
Sure.
I remember now. My bad was that they wouldn't let us film the finale at night, and so that we could have control of the lighting, because the projector is a projector. It has a certain amount of brightness, and during the day it's kind of swamped. So we wanted to do it at night, and actually the exec at Discovery refused to let us because he said, "Oh, I can't imagine someone, using a water slide at night. That doesn't make any sense." And we're like, "Yeah, but it's in a warehouse. Like, it doesn't matter what time of day it is."
And it doesn't make sense because it's a prototype of whatever we wanted.
Yeah,
Right.
so they wouldn't let us, and so the finale doesn't look nearly as good as it could have. For as good as that thing looks, it would have looked 10 times better if we could have shot that finale at night.
Yeah.
Did you guys try it at night?
Yes, yeah. I actually wrote it the night before the finale to make sure that it wasn't going to collapse and kill everyone.
Right.
And but we wanted to do the big reveal with Joe in his leopard print underwear and everything like that.
Did
Don't
they
spoil
did you choose that, or did they say, hey?
Of course I did. Actually, I was like, it would be awesome if I wore a Speedo. And they're like, I don't know. And then our producer was like, well, let's write it into the script and see what happens. And Discovery approved it, and I cannot believe that they actually showed that.
We were like,
lot
whoa,
of
hi, Joe. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, oh,
Speaking
man.
of projectors, we have a 10-foot wide screen that we watch our TV shows on. I'm
Were you
scarred for
surprised?
life, Joe. I'm scarred for life.
Joe was smuggling in those Speedos.
You're life
Yeah,
size. It was interesting.
I think the ugly for me was that after a few weeks, the production company decided to completely scrap the project once we were done filming it, and it ended up, all of the steel ended up as scrap in a giant dumpster.
What?
Yep. They just wanted to stop paying rent on that part of the building, so they just cut it up. There was about $25,000 worth of steel alone in that project, and they sold the whole thing for like $1,700 worth of scrap.
What? Wouldn't someone
Yeah.
wanted to have buy it?
Yeah, we were talking to some people about that, and it was just, that type of thing takes a really long time, a long process to get through. And it was a prototype. It was very rough, and lots of things would have had to happen to make it a real product. And there just wasn't enough time, and it couldn't fit out of the building. So, of course, the easiest answer would just be to chop it up and throw it away. Well, of course, there could have been other ways to deal with it.
Gosh, the people who worked on that for 5 weeks must have been like, oh my God.
I'm not sure they knew. I don't know.
Oh.
If you go to John Saragati's blog, he complained about
Oh,
that
really?
in the
Okay.
episode. He was like, they just, this was such a great build, and they didn't give it the treatment that it deserved about how it was made.
I mean, this could have been something that sat in front of, Discovery headquarters or Burning Man, Maker Fair, or a lot of the builds that we did could have been really cool things to show off at some of these places where people could enjoy them and be like, oh, learn from it, and how did that thing work, and how do you do this, and really, do the educational mission. But it just turns out there wasn't really one from the TV, side of things.
God, that's a damn shame.
Yeah.
Because it could have sat in front of the water park too. That'd have been a neat entry piece.
Yeah. Totally. Zombie attack for that one. I don't know. Do zombies like water?
We haven't decided whether or not they drown.
if you could put a zombie in it and run it for a few hours, you could probably make it really mad.
Gross.
Or you could put them in it and then play some video on the
Footage
screen.
of brains.
I don't know, what videos do they not like to watch? You could play them videos of something on the screen.
That they don't like to watch?
Yeah, so then they'll be stuck inside of this spinning tube and they can't get out and they're forced to watch like, Mr. Rogers or something.
That would be so funny. I don't know.
I'm not sure. It's too big really for a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah. Well,
hydraulics.
Wait.
You just use all the hydraulic fluid.
Maybe you could just like have it power, because we want zombie powered treadmills and zombie powered mouse wheels. So zombie wheels. So you could theoretically generate power. Well, no, you'd have.
Well, it's all hydraulics. I think you should just cut the tubes that are the pipes or whatever that go to the water slide and just use the hydraulic fluid and spray it all over the zombies.
Oh, okay. That works too.
Just make them slippery.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Why not? All right. Firefighter future tech.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, that was an awesome one. That was actually our Discovery people told me later on that was our highest rated episode. That was the one that viewers really connected with. And we certainly had a lot of fun on it too, because it was stuff that was sort of, it wasn't so whimsical, which was also fun to work on, but it was something that had like real world uses that people could understand immediately what it was for.
Right.
Yeah, this was a real practical build where we actually, we went and talked to potential end users, the firefighters, and we got to experience what the firefighters experienced, and we got to see what we could actually design that would help them. And then we went and did it and then came back and got to test it with the firefighters. And those guys actually, gave us their honest opinion about it. And it was just awesome to go to Modesto and do all the firefighter stuff. That was really cool. This is one of my favorite builds too.
I would say that was the good really was, when we're going out to Modesto, to demo in front of all these firefighters. And we're just kind of wetting our pants, really, because these firefighters, they're these huge, angry-looking dudes. They've all got big mustaches, and we just expected them to just laugh in our face and tell us that our stuff sucked, But it turned out that they were the nicest guys ever, and they really dug what we were doing. And they, seeing the looks on their faces as they saw like the heads-up display and the pyro pack and the two guys carrying a whole squad's worth of gear up the stairs with the stair climber, they really loved it, and they gave us lots of good feedback. So we felt really good about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And I loved the orange. It's my favorite color. But when I saw it, I was like, holy crap, that's a beautiful pack.
That's what she said.
It was very nicely done. That 3D printing thing was really neat.
Yeah. Yeah,
the 3D printing was maybe another good. Is showing off sort of the 3D printing, rapid prototyping side of things. That this was sort of, I guess, RepRap maybe was going on, but pre-MakerBot, all these other 3D printers, and we got to actually use some of the the higher end stuff to do the metal, prototyping in metal, and then making this giant pack. And Zaz and I got to actually go to Forecast 3D in San Diego to see the stuff, and just using some of those technologies was just really cool.
Cool. Bad of firefighter future tech.
For me, it was. Just Terry and I working all night to finish off the stair climber, which basically no one thought would work by the end of that night. It was in such bad shape. And then at about 3 a.m, we blew up all of the electronics that I'd built. And I didn't have replacement parts for half of it, so I had to completely redesign the electronics.
Oh, my gosh.
Starting at 3 o'clock in the morning with what I had on hand. Built that. And then as a result of not getting any sleep and I don't know, sticking my fingers in my eyes or something, I got a massive eye infection. So I was in total agony the entire finale day and most of the subsequent weekend with an infected eyeball.
I forgot about that. Funny the things you remember and the things you forget. Yeah, wow.
And did you guys ever get claustrophobic when you were in the midst of the fire and with your suits and all that?
A little bit at first, but I think once you get a feel for the mask that you're wearing, and you just start trusting your gear, it stops really being scary. Okay. And also knowing that there were real firefighters there, that if something actually happened, they'd save us.
Yep. Fair enough. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I have bad for that. I can't think of anything offhand. I just I don't know. I just liked that episode too much to have anything bad to say about it.
Cool.
I didn't get an eye infection.
I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are at the end of
You guys just keep talking and talking and talking and talking. Yeah, we're out of time for this week.
Yeah.
It sounds like we should probably like do this again next week and let these guys finish.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
like-
I think we'll save the weekly zombie tech questions for the end of that show.
Okay.
And
Sounds good.
maybe we'll finish up the rest of these projects too.
Cool. So we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, you can listen to this show every Thursday at ZombieTech.tv.
TV.
We're on Twitter at tymkrs. Joe's on Twitter at Joe Grand. And Zaz?
Nope.
Do you have a website or anything, Zaz?
No, not really. I'm bad at media.
He's the smart one.
So just look up Zoz, Z-O-Z
You can
Brooks.
Google me. There's some stuff out there.
Yeah. You can net stalk him like I did.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.